Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. For months, the U.S. government has been promising that M1 tanks would be delivered to Ukraine in September. Well, now it's September, and the word is that the delivery of the M1 tanks are going to be delayed by several weeks. So basically, they're not going to be delivered this month. By the time they are delivered, it is already going to be the rainy season in Ukraine. M1 tanks will not function in the mud that occurs in Ukraine, which is quite deep, without becoming mired. What's the reason for the delay? Does it matter? Not really. It doesn't really matter. But there are a lot of people that are pointing out that this delay was announced right after 2 of the 14 British Challenger tanks were the first 2 that were actually seen on the front line were destroyed. Actually, one of them was not even on the front line, but basically, the Challengers haven't really been seen on the front lines. So, all right, there's a lot of hullabaloo being made about Ukraine is advancing. This is true, but there are a few things to take into account with this. So let's go take a look at a map here. All right, so here is the map, and right here is Robotina, and that is where the majority of the major fighting and advances have been going on. The green part is where armored vehicles have advanced, and the major forces are located. The blue section is where the infantry has advanced without armored vehicles. What's happening is that the armored vehicles are coming up to one spot, dropping off the infantry, which only at this point only armored personnel carriers or infantry fighting vehicles, troop carriers, are actually being seen on the front lines. There are no tanks that are being seen, and not much artillery, not much, and as far as Ukrainian. And this is the deep state map. I kind of like this for a few reasons. It does show the location of Russian forces. I don't like it that it doesn't really show the Ukrainian. Maybe there's a way I can get that to come up, but I haven't found it yet. All right, so here's another reason I like it. These are the Russian fortifications. And so, as you see, the infantry has the Ukrainian infantry has made it through the first Russian defense line, slightly into the second defense line, and there is intense fighting over these trenches where the second defense line is. The first line is the anti-tank ditches and the Dragon's Teeth and minefields. The second line are the Russian infantry fighting forces are in these trenches. So obviously intense fighting going on over that. So yes, Ukraine is advancing, but we're coming into the rainy season. The armored vehicles are already not doing so well in advancing. And so, but I want to zoom in a little bit here and take a closer look at this. Is it really that the Ukrainians are advancing or is it that the Russians are withdrawing? There are two major targets, goals that the Ukrainians are trying to reach. One is Verbova. I've also seen it stated Verbovaya, and Novoprovokopivka. And no, I'm not going to try and say that one again. The Robotina is complete ruins. Just about every settlement that is on the front lines, the small settlements on the front lines, are absolute ruins. The rainy season and winter are coming. It makes sense to me for the Russians to fall back, which I've been expecting for some time, to settlements that still are not in ruins, especially Verbova. Possibly, Novoprokopivka, but maybe even further beyond the defense lines. What's going to happen in the winter time, during the rainy season, in the fall, and the winter, if the Russians fall back to settlements that are still intact and to their defense lines, where they've got supplies, they've got supply lines, they've got buildings that they can actually hole up in. If you look over here, the areas that the Ukrainian infantry are located in, that's all fields. That's open fields. Even if they make it to this point, even if they manage to clear some space through the first defense line here, and then the rains begin, their armor is not going to be able to move through all of this mud. Especially with it being targeted, go back out here, from all sides. As you can see, this entire area is surrounded by Russian forces, artillery, tanks, drones. There are now 3 drone organizations, brigades, that are now located around Robotina. So they're continuously getting pounded. There is only one supply road that goes in here, which you can see it's kind of faint here, but there's only one supply road that comes in and out of here that the Ukrainians can use. And that supply road is under constant bombardment. And so is the major area in the center here. So the Ukrainians try to push to the east over here toward Verbova, and then toward the south, but they still haven't gotten anything but a few foot soldiers that have gotten past any of the defense lines. The major goal, one of the for this offensive, is to reach Tokmak, which is down here. If you take a look at the space that Ukraine has managed to advance, look at all of the defense lines that are between Robotina and Tokmak, and look at the distance. It has taken them 3 months to get this far. Tokmak is 3 times that distance. With the defense, with all of these defenses between, in, and around Tokmak. All right, so let's go to some other areas here along the front lines. This is all gray area. And so here's another place where they are advancing, but it's mostly infantry. Nearly all of their advances are all infantry that are moving. Up here, you see infantry in that area. And even if they make it through there, look at all the defense lines here. If you look at all of these defenses, Ukraine wants to make it all the way down to the Sea of Azov. When you look at this distance that they want to achieve, is there anything realistic about that? I really don't think so. Sorry. There we go. All right. You made the wrong thing go away. Now, something you're probably going to hear about is that Ukraine launched a missile strike against Crimea, Sevastopol, and struck a naval shipyard. And they did damage an amphibious vehicle and diesel-electric submarine. That is one of Russia's older submarines. Apparently, it was in dock for repairs. And Russia says the ships can be repaired in a short period of time, and they will be back in service. 24 people were injured. 2 seriously were injured. And this is being decried as a major victory, but let's face it, the number of missiles they have launched against mainland Russia has been considerable. Hundreds of missiles have been launched. And this is it's not a failure per se of the Russian defenses. Russia has used the same strategy. And I've brought this up before. If you launch enough missiles against a target, you overwhelm the air defenses. So 10 missiles were launched, plus a number of naval drones. The naval drones were all taken out. 8 out of the 10 missiles were taken out, and 2 managed to hit the naval shipyard. So that's an 80% failure rate. But sooner or later, something gets through. If you keep on launching and keep on launching, sooner or later something gets through, especially if you launch a number of missiles all at once. Something will get through. It happens. Hopefully, whoever was injured will heal and recover. But I am never in favor of any deaths on either side. That's why I'm in favor of a diplomatic negotiated settlement regarding this. Stop the fighting, stop the killing. But now we have to look at the history of how Russia has responded to attacks on the Nord Stream pipeline, on the Crimean Bridge, etc. When Ukraine launches a strike and hits something like this, the response from Russia, typically the following day, maybe 2 days later, is considerable. Now, again, we are heading into the rainy season, heading into winter. I expect that Russia is going to launch a major strike against Ukrainian infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, military targets in mainland Ukraine, etc. Last year, Russia targeted only electrical distribution centers. They did not strike electrical generating plants. I expect that this winter, that is going to change. I think that Russia is going to strike actual electrical generating plants, non-nuclear plants. 98% of Ukraine's trains run on electricity. You knock out electricity, you knock out water supply, gas supply, because gas and water require electricity to generate pressure to deliver water and gas. So no water, no gas means living conditions will be unbearable. No electricity with electric trains means you won't be able to move heavy weaponry to the front lines. Although Russia has not tried to limit the delivery of heavy weapons to the front lines, this is a war of attrition. Russia has basically allowed the delivery of heavy weapons and troops to the front lines to eliminate that as a threat. That's the point. They hit the electrical generating stations last year to slow the delivery of these things to the front lines. Not to stop it, but to slow it down to a more manageable level, so that as a limited amount came in, they were able to target any threats that came their way. Now they don't have to limit it because the Ukrainian forces have been thinned out. They have committed the last of their mechanized forces to the front lines. They are drafting people with chronic illnesses, men up to 60 years old, teenagers. They're drafting women for medical purposes and encouraging females to join to go to the front line. So, and they're trying to get people, Ukrainians that have gone to other Ukrainian males that have gone to other countries to be sent back. They're out of weapons. They're using cluster munitions and HIMARS because they're out of artillery shells, and mostly out of artillery launchers because so many have been destroyed. And this can't continue. No matter what successes, so-called successes, which are questionable whether they're successes or whether the Russians are intentionally or in an organized manner drawing back behind their defensive lines, which is what I think is going on, because this has been a very gradual withdrawal, retreat, whatever you want to call it, for the Russians to pull back from those front lines, leaving only open fields and completely level settlements that the Ukrainians will be stuck in during the rainy season and the coming winter. It's not like they can pull back. The infantry in those fields along the front lines, without vehicles, how are you going to supply them? How are you going to evacuate your wounded? You can't. The mud is so deep in these areas. You step in it and you sink down to your knees. That's how the mud is in these areas, especially after all the fighting has churned up all the dirt in these areas. This is all farmland. So these Ukrainian you know, successes. Are they really successes, or are they just playing into the Russian pockets that have been built on purpose? Are the Russians just pulling back on purpose to allow the Ukrainians to pull into certain areas? You know, such as darn it. You know, you look at this and sorry. Okay. I mean, would you want to be in the center of this, surrounded by Russian forces? This is a fire pocket. They are on constant fire from both sides. Would you want to be there? Chances are not. And to keep pushing south, to keep trying to push south and extend that, you're extending your supply lines. You're deepening this cauldron, as the Russians call it. Is that something you really want? Is that really a success? You're putting your own soldiers, your own infantry, in harm's way. I expect that what is going to happen here is that many Ukrainian infantry, especially once the rains and the cold come, if you out there on those front lines in that mud, you're not going to, there's not going to be fuel for a fire. But if you manage to, especially with all the rain, if you manage to build a fire to stay warm, to dry yourself out, etc., well, now you got light and heat that as you got smoke rising, you got light at night that is visible across these flat fields, you got heat that is visible under infrared. How are you going to survive? How are these people even going to have clean water? Sure, you can capture rainwater, but if you try capturing enough rainwater for it to be significant, you've got to build structures to capture it, and that increases your visibility. You're a bigger target. This is foolishness. This is insane. This is sending soldiers to their deaths. I don't even see how they're able to supply or evacuate their soldiers now, even while the ground is dry. It's highly questionable to me whether that's even a possibility. I really deeply question whether this is an actual success. All right. Last thing I want to mention, a Ukrainian official made a statement that Indian and Chinese people have a low intellectual potential. Ukraine doesn't make any friends. They seem incapable. Somebody helps them, and they just insult them. They want trade deals with India and China, but now they're issuing insults to India and China. They've insulted Russians. Germans. They've insulted the French. They've offended the Polish. They've insulted Joe Biden and the Americans. Everyone that offers them assistance, they wind up insulting, and it's ridiculous. they have no capacity for diplomacy. The only idea they have of diplomacy seems to be putting their hand out. I've seen no indication of anything else. Anyway, all right, so we're going to have to wait and see just what happens. Like I said, there are no M1 tanks that are headed to Ukraine anytime soon, and no F-16s headed there until next year. They're out of everything, and yet they still keep it going. I'm just shocked that the Ukrainian people have not risen up en masse against all of this, but they are living under martial law. And what martial law means there is worse than anything that we've seen here. I mean, we've seen martial law here, but that's way different. Journalists have been arrested. Western journalists from CNN and other sources have been detained. So this ain't looking good. All right, share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a good day.